We'll take the stragglers as they arrive. There. Are we? We're good to go. Morning. Just advise when present it's a public meeting and it is being live streamed on the YouTube channel. We're not expecting a fire alarm this morning, so if it does go, escape behind us or through the doors just there. Item 1 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Anybody? Any declarations of interest? Nope. Okay. Moving on to apologies and absence. Dawn?
Thank you, Chairman. I've got apologies from Councillor Hartley and Councillor Leggett, and Councillor Clancy is Councillor Leggett's substitute.
Thank you. So I'm missing Mr. Bullman and
At the moment,
and we think that Mr. Councillor Riley's at the vending machine. So I'll go to minutes from the last meeting held on the 6th of September and the 20th of September, page 5 and 13. Any notes on those? Jan?
I think we did discuss the issue of the landline changeover. I know it was under the Broadland digital rollout, but I think it's something important to note, and we did raise it as an issue because I mean we feel it's not that widely known, and for some vulnerable, and we discussed the fact that some vulnerable customers may be without a phone. So it's just not noted. I couldn't find it in the minutes.
Okay, Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and matters arising. Any matters arising? No. Okay, moving on to item 5, Chairman's announcement. I've only got one announcement, and that's to hopefully James is watching online, but James is now recovering, and he's looking to come back, James Overy. So just like to welcome him back and send him all our regards.
Good news.
Item 6, public speaking. No public speaking. So we'll move on to Cabinet reports. So from the Cabinet, and it's agenda item 9. So Corinne?
Thank you, Chair. So you'll remember in February, Cabinet agreed to earmark £49,500 to contribute to the development of a full outline business case for a CRM. So this report is the next stage in bringing back to you with the purpose of outlining how we propose to spend that money to enable us to develop on consultancy resource to enable us to develop a full business case in relation to a customer relationship management system. So you'll remember the digital strategy, the ICT and digital strategy sets out the principle around improving and transforming our services and service delivery in relation to using technology to help us to deliver that. But also you'll know from our transformation agenda, the need to continue to do more with less and using technology to help us support that service delivery. So the report sets out some principles around providing increased customer service, effective and efficient end-to-end digital services where appropriate, but also the ability for customers to self-serve and access our services 24/7. In order to understand the quantifiable benefits that technology can provide in terms of service delivery, we need to work with some consultants to outline a full business case in terms of what a customer relationship management could save us as an organisation. In paragraph 5.1 in the report, this gives you an idea around the quantifiable savings that other local authorities have realised as part of embarking on a similar journey. So the report asks today, do you recommend to Cabinet the use of the £49,500 already earmarked in reserves for consultancy resource to help us understand the quantifiable benefits of a customer relationship management system? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to note that from SEAC, there was an amended recommendation. So that amended recommendation is on the Cabinet papers on page 14. And item 2 now reads to utilise the Broadland District Council's contribution of £49,500 from earmarked reserves agreed by Cabinet on the 8th of February 2022 on consultancy resource to support in the development of a full outline business case. Okay, so the report is on the recommendation to appoint the consulting services. So what this isn't to do is to look at the level of service at the moment. If there is anything regarding levels of service currently, if that can be discussed with the portfolio holder, who I thought would be joining us here, but outside of the meeting. Thank you. So questions, Sue?
Yeah, so can I clarify then? I was slightly confused by the original 13.2, which says to utilise the 110,000. I'm presuming that that's why CEC has recommended that change, because it is only the 49,500 that has already been agreed.
It is, yes. It's the Broadland District Council's share of the 110,000, and therefore
thank
we're
you,
not using the 110,000 from reserves.
No, thank you very much.
Jan?
Thanks. Just clarification on GDPR issues. So on page 18, paragraph 3.3, you give a summary of the findings from key business systems, and it talks about limited system integration, no central customer record, multiple customer records without a master record, and unconnected accounts. So I'm just wondering how that relates then to GDPR, because there may be issues that are raised in one area of council business, which perhaps shouldn't be shared then, in the sense that you're suggesting of having a central master record. So I'm just wondering how that would, obviously that's going to be part of the exploration, I guess.
Thank you. So there's two aspects in terms of where we're looking, or where we will be looking to integrate services. A lot of it will be void of personal data. So, for example, it's unlikely to have in a data warehouse, unlikely to have the names of people necessarily. And that's sort of, I guess, where the GDPR aspect comes into it, as we don't know what we want to put in that data warehouse at this point in time. So part of the exploration is understanding how do we use a CRM to enable us to understand what data we need, then enables us to make an assessment, impact assessment from a GDPR perspective, to better understand and make sure we've got the protocols in place.
Okay, but obviously it's a critical issue. We need reassurance on that. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one more?
You can. Can I just take apologies for absence? Sorry. Any declarations of interest from Councillor Bullman before we continue? Okay. Well, I don't think it's a declaration of interest in this. And you, Steve? No declarations from Steve or Councillor Bullman.
Councillors have confirmed the same, Chairman.
Thank you. Sorry, Jan, you can.
Yeah, so it's
continue.
just clarification. I'm sorry, I just don't follow it. So, and it's probably just me. But again, page 19, paragraph 3.7, you've got the need to shift our transformation efforts away from system consolidation and technology implementation towards the way we serve customers and the experience they receive from us through a program of transformation. And I'm linking that again with, I suppose, paragraph 4.1 as well. Just questioning, there's very much an emphasis on a technology approach, which of course is, what we're bringing to this, and the savings and efficiencies, and not so much on then what is the impact on the customer, people. Yeah. And I'm just a bit concerned that, it's driven by IT digital transformation. So, you've got a particular agenda to ensure that efficiency, but we shouldn't then lose sight of the fact that we're actually serving our customers and where that focus is. So, but I didn't quite follow that meaning in paragraph 3.7.
Thank you. So it's around the outcomes that we'll achieve. So we see technology as being the enabler. So the implementation of the technology is not the outcome. The outcome is the impact that has on the ability for our customer to serve them, either serve themselves or the level of experience they receive when they access our services. So technology, and in terms of technology that we deploy from the output of this discovery phase, may may, as part of a discovery, say there are some services that won't go into a CRM. There are, because they're not appropriate in terms of the way that we serve customers, and there may be ones that are appropriate for digitalisation, and therefore that assessment will be done as part of customer journey mapping as we go through the process of a discovery phase. So to reassure you, the paper may be technology focused, but actually we do see technology as an enabler, and the outcome is more around the increased customer service and experience that they receive when they access our services.
Yes, thank you. I think when we were discussing this as original proposal, I did raise the point that somebody had in a meeting described it as being able to make policy at the click of a button. And I was very reassured to find that that was not the intention. So there is a customer focus that's the important thing. So, you know, you're effectively reassuring us that it's not just we're going to be picking up data and using that to make our decisions based on just that data. So I welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you, Clancy. Sorry, Councillor Clancy.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, I think this is a very good exercise. If we were running purely a business, this is an extremely good exercise which drives out cost. However, in any business environment, you would be looking at your customer needs, wants, requirements before you actually make this decision. The concern I have about it is what Councillor Davis alluded to. We are a front-facing service. We are frontline service delivery. The online offer, looking at, you know, the costings, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, you know, you would do everything you possibly can online. But unfortunately, in reality, there is a lot of people who are going to slip through the net on this. There's a lot of people who either won't access, don't access, or are nervous about accessing. And in the real world, where we are supposed to be delivering, these are often the people who probably need our service the greatest, who I am concerned, as I say, I do see lots of merit in this, and I see lots of beneficial impacts, and I see lots of benefits in driving out cost. But I am absolutely concerned how people potentially will slip through the net. And it's the very people who probably need our services the greatest, for the reasons I've already alluded to. I'd be interested to know how we're going to ensure that this doesn't happen, because in reality, this is a huge risk. This is a leap of faith. This is not data-driven. This is not knowledge-driven. This is a business process, which I admire. I admire the fact of a business process, but I'm not concerned with what baseline we're starting at from, Chairman. Sorry, I'm not sure what baseline we're starting at.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. So in terms of the baseline and what we're starting at, this is why we need to do this discovery phase, this piece of work. We need to be able to look at each of our service areas, understand how customers currently are accessing us, how we can better shift demand to enable us to enable the customers that need to access face-to-face services, the ability to do that, and those that want to self-serve down a channel that's right for them at the right time and convenient for them. We enable those customers to be able to do that. So it is absolutely not about digitalizing all of our services. It is about the right channel, the right time that's convenient for the customer. So we need to do this piece of work to understand what those right channels look like, where that demand is currently coming in, and where do the opportunities lie for us to better serve those customers down channels that are appropriate for them.
Thank you, Chair. If I just come back on that, yeah, I think take that on board very much. In that case, I can't actually see there's any merit in employing consultants to do that, because there is elected members and officers working throughout the organisation who are best placed to pick up this data, are best placed to pick up this information. I really can't see a role for consultants. I genuinely can't, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. So we plan to work with consultants that have the local authority experience in CRM implementation and wider. Within the organisation, that skill and that knowledge base is limited, purely because we haven't gone through this process before in terms of implementation of the CRM. So we need to get the balance right between, exactly as you say, having the customer quantitative knowledge against having the technological experience and skills to deliver at the other end. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Riley and then Councillor Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on the thread that's going, just in terms of understanding, is totally accept that you'd need to do a discovery phase of this to understand where you're going. All multinationals engage in this kind of thing in terms of their customer base and their service provision. Slightly different. We're a service. We've got statutory authority to deal with. We're not a business in that way. And I know with some local councils, it's very sincere to a number of local councils up and down the country. There are also not what's referenced here, and I wouldn't expect you to have done it, but councils where there are some issues with technology. And picking up on Stuart's point here, one of them that you see flagged up elsewhere, you do see flagged up some companies as well. If you're moving over to a digital service, you still need also a fully functioning telephony service, because there are a wide range of customers, particularly that we're dealing with, who will never use technology, wouldn't even know that it's there to use, because they're not actually on the web anyway. And in some of the services, and I've heard a criticism from council not too far away with that we collaborate, from other representatives, that it seems to be a little bit of an issue when you're trying to connect with them on a telephone basis. We've had some issues ourselves, which are being ironed out. I understand that. But if we completely move away to a digital service, I'm fearful, like Stuart, that we will have problems, and problems that perhaps we'll never see because these people aren't inputting back because they're not using digital. So it actually is a false picture you're looking at as well with those customers. So is that the intention, to fully move away, not to include, this backup telephony service as well?
Thank you. So the intention is not to close any channel. The intention is to make sure those that want to use the channels that are most accessible to them can use them and receive a good level of customer experience and service as they access those channels. So in the telephony example, you'll know the majority of our demand is coming through telephones at the moment. There will be a high percentage, and this is what we need to find out, there'll be a high percentage of those people that are coming through telephones. If we opened up a service online, they may prefer to use a service online. That enables us some more capacity to deal with those that wish to use the telephone. Likewise, face-to-face, there may be some customers that visit us via a face-to-face service that may want to access another channel should that channel be available to them. So I think it comes back to the point about right time, right channel for the customer, and us being able to open up that demand and refocus that demand to enable those customers to access in a way that's good for them. Thank you.
I think it's worth that response. This is what happens in Scrutiny, is that we do actually minute that in that way, because it's actually talking in an in-depth way about the service. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering whether in the build-up to the collaboration and the acquisition of the Horizon building, there was a lot of discussion about a hub and spoke model where we would have outreach officers around the two districts. Is that a baseline consideration for this project? Because when you're talking about the possibility of people face to face, I think if we do start at the beginning with asking our customers what they would like, then maybe these outreach officers are actually what they would like, which is face to face contact with a representative of the council who could then help them access the right departments. So is that part of the baseline thinking? Because it has seemed to have been talked about as a thread throughout our discussions over the last few years, but I'm not sure that I'm hearing anything to do with that in this. Thank you.
Thank you. I wouldn't like to predetermine what the output of this piece of work is going to give us in terms of what the need is and therefore how we service that need. However, if that comes through the work, through the discovery phase of the work, we'll think about how we can what those solutions are to those requests. I think we would need to bring that back as part of the wider piece of work in terms of this discovery phase, if that is what is recommended.
Sorry, just go back. So will it be included as an option if we're asking customers for their opinions and their preferences? Will it actually be included as an option? Are you agreeing that that can be included as an option?
I'm agreeing to a discovery phase piece of work and the outputs that customers tell us, and collating those outputs. At this stage, I cannot tell you what options we'll be asking customers or what that looks like going forward. We need the wider support to go through that customer journey mapping process.
Councillor Creamy-Governew.
Hi. I do understand we need to go with technology and go forward, but we also need a telephone service as well. When people ring up, a functional telephone service, they want an instant answer. How are we going to guarantee that people sending queries in by email have an answer straight away? They don't have to wait a week or 2 weeks for a reply. Because if I had a query with the council, I want to know there and then what my options are and not wait 2 weeks.
Thank you. So in terms of the benefits that a technology piece could give us is actually not waiting for the customer to reach out for us. We can keep them updated through automation in terms of saying your application is now at stage 1, at stage 2, at stage 3, and keeping the customer up to date around automation. Again, specifics around telephony service and the channel of access. For us, that's again about shifting that demand to the right channel to make sure we can provide the service that customers expect to us down the channels in which they access us, and being able to monitor that through our data and intelligence, the report that you saw last week, and being able to adapt our services to better increase those metrics that we measure as we go forward.
I mean, updating people, yes, that's fine if you're on the web, but people who are not on the web, like elderly people, and they want an answer straight away, they want the telephone service to ring up. So we do need to still have a functioning telephone service that they can get through to a person straight away, which sometimes is, at the moment, is very, very difficult.
Okay. Anything, Corinne?
Just from me, so we are looking at our telephone service, and we do continually monitor our telephone service. So there's live dashboards that operational managers have access to. There's also CMLT reports that go to CMLT weekly. You also see your strategic indicators in your quarterly reporting that enables you to better understand the performance of the telephone going forward. If there are any sort of isolated challenges, we can pick them up and go through them outside, if that's okay.
Can I give you one example?
No,
No?
I think we're sort of like, if you can take that one outside
Okay, I'll see you after.
of this and there. So I've got Councillor Kelly, Councillor Bullman, Councillor Holland, and then we'll go to recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Good report, Corinne. I do agree with the recommendations for this. We need to know what our customers do. But what we found in many cases of where we've got consultants, that we as the elected members do never hear about it until their recommendations come. I would hate to find out that they haven't come and talked to members like this group, because we know what our electorate do, as Sue has said, and so has Stuart. We need to know what they're looking for. So we need the consultants to talk to us as members for what we require them to be looking at, because we know what our electorate really needs. So if you can take that on board as well, please, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, be happy to include that as a stakeholder group as part of the consultation.
Thank you, Ken. Peter?
I think it's well known I come from the quill pen era, and therefore have an innate suspicion about anything that's technologically claimed to be superior. Emails with me, I don't know whether I'm unusual, seem to disappear into the ether, and I'm constantly chasing up emails to find answers, not just with local authorities, but also with businesses. and there's no substitute for actually talking to a person. I'll give you a specific example. My car insurance company sent me a renewal for just over £500. My fault, I shouldn't have such a big car. But on the other hand, I thought, well, I'll just have a look on a website and do a comparison. And I did, and it came up with £290. So I got onto the phone to my insurance company, and lo and behold, after a discussion and negotiation, which could not probably have been completed by email, they came up with the right price. So there's no substitute in my mind for this immediacy of speaking to an individual. And I don't think any amount of technology will actually supplant face-to-face or telephone discussions to enable a quick resolution to an issue. Therefore, I am concerned that we are rushing into this. And yes, there are all sorts of reassurances. No, we won't do without the telephone system. And no, we won't. I have an innate suspicion that as time progresses, more and more will be shifted online, where people don't actually want to do it online, and there'll be less and less reliance on the telephone. I'm just naturally suspicious. So I would like a reassurance, actually probably from the chief executive, that that would never happen. I'm happy to put that as a proposal.
I'll second that.
There we are.
Corinne?
Thank you. So reassurance in terms of this is about right channel, right time, that's right for the customer. This isn't about closing channels and not allowing customers to access those channels. It is about better managing the demand down those channels. There will be customers that would like to use online services and are not able to currently because we haven't got that provision in place for them. So there's a group there that also will benefit from such approach. I think in terms of reassurance, this paper that I'm bringing to you today isn't saying we will invest in that technology. The paper is saying we need to do a discovery phase to better understand those services and transactions that can move into and be allow an effective and efficient service delivery by using technology and enabling technology to deliver that. A decision stage will come back with more detailed analysis through a business case that will come back to this group, and it may say we may do a CRM, it may say we may not, and recommend different recommendations. And that's something that we'll bring back to this group. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarity. I mean, that's exactly where I was with this, that it's a discovery phase for it.
Chairman, I'll just respond to the comment directly, if that's okay. And really, Corinne's kind of expressed it probably better than I can. But we'll never look to turn off face-to-face, phone. It's about a complementary system, dependent on the complexity, whether it's sorting out your car insurance. There'll be complexities around some of the issues we provide to, or services we provide to people that will always be best resolved on the telephone or face-to-face. So I think it's about allowing customers choice, residents choice in how they engage with us and when they engage with us, and providing this full suite of options. And even if come the day that officers were of a mind, we can close down the phone lines, close down the face-to-face options, ultimately members wouldn't allow us to do that. But it's not on the agenda, not on the radar, not planned, because we recognise the value in face-to-face, being able to talk to people on the phone, but also having the options where services are available as far as we can 24/7 through use of technology. So all channels remain open. I hope that's useful.
Thank you very much. You may.
I understand completely your assurances, but as time progresses, things take a slide down this slippery slope, and I just want to be reassured that sometime in the future, it won't be a question of switching it off, but it'll be a question of it being made more difficult so that people can't actually access. So it's my cynical nature, I know, and my disbelief in assurances that leads me to this proposition.
Chairman, I absolutely understand the position as expressed. I don't sense that the way we deliver local democracy is going to change over the next foreseeable future, and there'll always be members to check any enthusiasm of me or my successors in terms of the way we change things. There is absolutely no desire or intent to frustrate things in stopping people to have face-to-face or the ability to phone. And even if we were of a mind to do that, I know that members would challenge, and your successors would continue to challenge, because it's really important, the commercial environment and some of the practices we can learn from, but ultimately we deliver public services. We have to be able to do that in a way that's accessible to people.
Thank you very much for your assurance, and that will be minuted for there. I'll take one final question from Sue, and then we will go to the recommendations.
Well, it was more of a point, really. I think a lot of these things were discussed when the first report was brought through. I abstained on that. I'm turning into a serial abstainer, I'm afraid. But this report, it seems to me, is to whether we're going to agree to put that money towards and looking to see how that might work. So on that basis, I think that we must do that before we start trying to make any changes. So I can see why we would potentially want to have a look at it. My concern really is that consultants after consultants after consultants is a very expensive way to run a council.
Okay, thank you. I'll take you to the recommendations, but the recommendation, as outlined previously, will be as per page 14, and so resolution 1 and resolution 2. And resolution 2, just to clarify, is only to utilise Broadland District Council's contribution of 49,500.
Could I just, on that recommendation, rather than putting an amendment, rather than putting an amendment, just an amendment, which I could do right now, I'm going to hold back, is that at the cabinet meeting from the minute, could you also reflect these key points that have been made about telephone system? There's not a desire to go to that, and also about this coming back to the, which you said you'd be prepared to do on Ken's point, come back to the the group in terms of that, and also the consultants being involved and coming through us as well and briefing us. Could you do that?
Yeah, if you remember, Vice Chair, you are actually representing me
No.
because I'm on annual leave.
Oh, I see. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm
Oh, well,
leaving the country.
I will do that for sure then.
Thank you.
I'm making a note for myself.
Yeah, you didn't make a note last time, but
That's okay.
no.
Dominican Republic.
So
We've got two places where recommendations are stated. So you were talking about page 14, but on page 23 is the report. Is that what you said, that that's been changed then?
yes, page 23 has been changed because
Yeah, okay, so-
it's slightly
Because the wording is different there.
the wording is different because it talks about 110,000, but that's 110,000
Yeah.
is the total project cost, and the 49,500 is purely Broadland District
Right, and we're not
Council's
changing that
contribution.
wording because that's
Therefore, the
original.
49,500 is just the utilisation of that reserve, as mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
So
okay.
if we can go to page 14. I alluded to this earlier. We're taking the recommendations as per SEAC minutes for recommendation on page 14. I did allude to that very first and again. So all those in favour?
Sorry, can I
Dawn?
assist?
We're taking SEAC's recommendations, page 14. We will, yeah. Are you there, Sue?
Can I just check that everyone's clear what recommendation we're voting on?
Yeah.
I'll
So-
just give you a moment. Everyone okay?
Do you want to read them out, Mark?
I'll read them out. So, resolved to recommend to Cabinet, number 1, agree to initiate the discovery phase as the first phase towards establishing the current state, the future state, and the underpinning technology to inform a fully costed business case for investment to deliver a first-class customer service. Item 2, utilise the Broadland District Council's contribution of 49,500 from earmarked reserves agreed at Cabinet on the 8th of February 2022 on consultancy resource to support in the development of a full online business case. Outline. All those in favour?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10 for, Chairman.
Against?
2 against.
And there should be no abstentions.
Should be.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lee. So we will now move to agenda item 10, and we have Sinead presenting for us.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of bringing this report to you today is to provide you with an overview of the peer challenge, which took place back in July of this year, including the feedback report from the peer challenge team and an action plan that has been developed as a result. So just a bit of background. So the LGA were invited by South Norfolk and Broadland to conduct a peer challenge, providing the councils with feedback on the core areas the LGA conduct peer challenges on, which can be seen at point 2.2 of the report, as well as feedback specifically on our joint partnership. A summary of the findings of the report can be found in 3.1. Overall, the team were very impressed with the joint partnership and really praised the work that the team have done, particularly during the COVID period, and recognise the councils are really seen as place and system leaders within the Norfolk area. But they also did provide some constructive feedback for us, and they are in the form of 8 key recommendations, which can be seen in 3.2. Following the feedback report and recommendations, we've produced a draft action plan, which can be seen in the appendix, and this is really to enable us to be able to take those recommendations forward and do some reviews and exploratory work around how we implement those recommendations. The peer team will be coming back in 6 months' time to do a day review to see how we're getting on with implementing those actions. And then just finally, onto the recommendations, they are for Cabinet to approve the report and then to approve the subsequent action plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Nerdon, Councillor Kelly.
Steve, can you turn your microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Should be.
Right, super, thank you. This action plan that was prepared in consultation with Cabinet, in consultation with members, or was it purely an action plan that was put together by officers?
The action plan was initially pulled together by our management team, but they have obviously liaised with their portfolio holders, and it's been through leaders as well.
When you say leaders, you mean just Sean and Mr. Fuller? What I'm just questioning is whether this action plan can and possibly could be looked at in more detail by the Cabinet portfolio holders and say, no, well, actually, we don't agree with that, or and change what is in that action plan.
That absolutely can be done, and that's the purpose of bringing it through scrutiny and through to Cabinet for the approval of the action plan. So changes can be made.
So changes could be made by members of this committee on this particular action plan, and that would go forward to the Cabinet.
Yes, good morning, Sean. I did see in there was references to the difficulties of officers to council members, where it does quote, and I'm rather dismayed to see that junior members were shielded from coming because of the misbehaviour of members. Now, I find this really disturbing. I don't know if the incidents were from South Norfolk, from Broadland, but whoever it is or wherever it was, we've got no instance who actually was perpetrating this and how and when these individual junior officers will then become, say, in front of this committee. Because where's the misbehaviour of this committee? What I need to know, and I'm sure most of the members need to know, who is perpetrating this? Why haven't we found out about it? Why is it not in front of the standards committee, and where are we going to go with this? So I would like, probably Emma's not here to really be able to say anything about this, but I'll say Trevor's there. So I find it really disturbing for this to be in front of the whole general public, and it dismays me really heartily. Thank you.
Chairman, if I could respond.
Absolutely.
Clearly, as you rightly say, the monitoring officer is not here, and the monitoring officer will drive forward these aspects. But, however, when we saw the draft report, my reaction and response was not dissimilar to your own, councillor. And I did probe the team and say, actually, can you justify the comments you put in your report? And they said, we are reporting, we are simply holding a mirror up to you in terms of what was said to us. And things when you do peer review, and I know some members will have done peer reviews themselves, I've done them myself, you always triangulate what you hear. So it's not a single comment from somebody. They were quite robust in terms of the peer review, pushing back and saying, look, actually, we were really impressed by what we saw when we came to Broadland and South Norfolk. You've got some bits that you could address that would help things move better. And actually, there's some work for you to do on behaviours. And what they said was, we need to keep that into context, but you have got elements of poor behaviour that were reflected to us, and there's a chance for you to address those to make things better. So I think it's incumbent upon us to take those in the positive vein in which they were made. There's an opportunity for us to look at how we work better together. And the report cites member to member, cites member to officer and officer to officer. The peer review team were very keen to say, keep this into context and perspective, but there are things you can do to improve the way you work. And they're particularly mindful of us moving to a single building and making sure, and actually, that we get those things right. So what we plan to do is to start to look at values and behaviours and challenge and more robustly challenge if there are bad behaviours. I know that Emma's got planned meetings with committee chairs. I know that we're doing some work as a senior officer team to say, actually, how do we make sure officer to officer relationships are as strong and as positive as they can be, and then working in that member to officer arena as well. So please do keep these comments because they look stark on paper. I've had the opportunity to discuss them with the peer review team and put those into context. And they kept coming back to, you are doing some really, really great stuff in Broadland and South Norfolk. There's a lot of the things that you are doing which are exemplar. There are some areas where you can improve. And some of the behaviours that were played back, you just need to address and take the edges off some of the interactions with people. I think we can do that really positively. I think we can do that to move the collaboration forward, and I mean that not in terms of necessarily deepening further. I mean it in terms of the way we work with each other. This was not about what we do, the way we work with each other. And I think we can do that in a very, very positive vein. And I would want to put on record putting those comments into context. They said, this is something we had played back to us. We would be remiss if we didn't bring that to your attention. And again, some people who've done peer reviews say, well, actually, some of this stuff happens in the side conversations and not in the report. The Local Government Association has in itself been challenged because we do sector-led improvement in local government. And some of the pushback that they've had from sector-level improvement is to say you need to have a bit more challenge
in your reports. And so they felt it was right and appropriate to say, Trevor, there's an area you need to focus on here. We're putting it in the report, keep it in perspective, but use our report to drive positive behaviours.
Sue, I had you next.
Thank you, Trevor. I think there's one thing I would say is that it's very difficult to read something like this and then be pushed into a meeting where we're expected to recommend an action plan. You saying you've had the opportunity to look at some of these things outside of this room, I can quite understand why Councillor Kelly feels the way he does. It is quite shocking, and to only have it in time to look at an overview and scrutiny meeting in order to recommend something to Cabinet for an action, I think is probably not quite right. It would have been useful, no doubt, if members had an opportunity to look at this before and ask a few questions, might have been helpful. My second comment would be that you've referred to various relationships, and so you've talked about member to officer. I would just like to say there is also officer to member that needs to be looked at as well. I think sometimes that could cause problems, not largely, but again, it's something that could be, it's the other way around, isn't it? A lot of the onus seems to me to be being put on members, and an implication that members aren't behaving properly. And I have not seen evidence of that, but I think it should be an equal process. So I'd like you to take that on board, please.
Chairman, if I can, absolutely. Sorry if I missed one of the context, and I didn't mean anything other than we need to look at relationships are at least two people normally, and it's about making sure we get those relationships right. And I think if we're honest and candid, I would say, well, actually, I've seen things that I thought, oh, that wasn't quite right. And I think there's an opportunity for us to reset the dial collectively to make sure we get things right and positive for the future. So again, this is a positive comment in the report for us to take forward. It's supposed to be a learning process, and this is an opportunity for us to develop.
Thank you. I mean, I concur with you in that the whole purpose of the review, the report, is to make recommendations on how we make things better. Therefore, taking your assurances from it,
So my main point about this report, actually, and this is the reason why I am not going to be able to support this, is because there is a significant overlap between administration and political. There's so many references in this report to the political side of things, and some of the implications are that it's the political that has to be improved or worked together or changed, and I'm afraid I think there's a crossover between what members do and what administration do. So it seems to me it's not really taken the approach of how well is the collaboration with the administration working outside of the fact that there are two sovereign councils who may wish to do different things and who may be politically controlled in different ways. So I can't possibly go along. I mean, I've got a list of things that I would have liked to put forward, but really that would take far too long, and I'm sure other people have got some as well. But that would be why I could not support this action plan. It seems to me to be stepping over the line between what is administration and what is political.
Chairman, if I could respond. So first off, the action plan is the headlines. This is the start of a journey. The peer review team will come back in 6 months' time to see how we're doing. To see whether they're seeing us taking forward the recommendations that they put forward. And the peer review is political and administration. So the lead political peer, was, I've forgotten his name, it's just gone straight out of my head, gentleman from Oxford, Ian Helsworth, from an experienced politician from Oxfordshire. He will come back as part of the peer review. So it does cover both sides of us as an organisation in terms of member leads and officers, but is intended constructively to help us move things forward collectively. And the comments around behaviour, and it's not commenting or seeking to comment on the sovereign nature of each authority, and that's very much recognised. The comments around behaviour were more around how we work together, not what we do together. And so I'd welcome the input from members across the board in terms of thoughts or actions they think we would benefit in the action plan. But those things you've got in front of you are the headline issues, taking forward the recommendations. There'll be things that we haven't thought of yet that will emerge as we go through. So wider input and participation will be really helpful for us to move forward.
Thank you. Grant?
Thank you, Chairman. When I was listening to Councillor Holland's first lot of comments, I was thinking she's stealing my thunder again. Yeah, I'm looking at number 2, which talks about refresh our values and behaviours, and we're talking about staff and members. And I look at B and I see establish a series of training sessions for chairman and vice chairman for effective chairing of meetings. Now, I've attended a training session on how to chair a meeting, but when I look at that, I'm thinking in terms of, are they going to try and give us that sort of like training on how to identify behaviors or where values are involved? Because when I look at A, I see conducting a review of member officer protocols. And I was thinking in terms of what Councillor Holland was saying with regards to, it's not just members in meetings, how we behave, but it's also members to officers. And an action is to review the member officer protocol, but we are the ones, the chairs and the vice chairs, are being asked to get some training in. And you know, I was going to suggest that we have some sort of, you have a review of the member officer protocol, but you also have some training of the senior people on how they need to react and behave towards members. So, it's all very well to train members, but you also maybe, I'm suggesting, need to have some officers trained in how they deal with or interact with members. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you very much for that. So the review of the protocol and the collective protocols which are in the Constitution is something that Emma will lead and move through. And they relate to both parties in a relationship, whether that's the officer, the member, the officer to officer, the member to member, or vice versa. And in terms of the training for chairs, the training for chairs is not peculiar to members. It's about what goes on in a meeting, which picks up the officer behavior in the meeting and also the member behavior in the meeting. So it's about supporting chairs to get the right place in terms of the way we behave in our meetings, particularly our public meetings, but any of our meetings. We are working through as an officer team around actually how do we address the comments within the peer review. But singling out the chairs for training is because the chairs chair the meeting and responsible for the conduct in the meeting, whether that's officers or members or the heady mix when you put both together.
Thank you. I've got Sue Catchpole, Steve Riley, and then Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair.
Finally, Councillor Davis, and I think then we'll look at wrapping up.
I was interested and pleased to hear you suggest, Trevor, that you'd like our input into the action plan. Presumably that means the action plan as a whole. How would you suggest we can do that?
Chairman, if I can, so this meeting is the first kind of run out of that. If the overview and scrutiny are able to agree the kind of headline issues, and then as we delve into and work through those, any input through, whether that's an email to the monitoring officer who's overseeing this, so an email to Emma to say, actually, I'd like, have we looked at this? Have we done this? So that we have a good exchange of views would be really, really helpful. So also we'd intend to bring this back to overview and scrutiny in terms of progress. because what I don't want us to do is have the peer review team come back in 6 months' time and then particularly overview and scrutiny, but members at large and officers at large go, well, we're not familiar with the action plan or what's happening. So we would intend to bring that back in terms of a progress report, your input to Emma all through this meeting as we move forward, because if we don't collectively recognise and own what the peer review have said and our response to it, we'll be tripping ourselves up anyway, and we'll be missing the opportunity that the peer review presents us with.
Thank you. I mean, I note there's some key dates in there around parts of it being completed by the end of December. So, and again, if we've got the peer review coming forward in March, so then maybe perhaps in the January meetings we can have a.
Yeah, Chairman, if I could just respond to that. This is not about a fixed point. This is about us saying, actually, there's stuff that we work on. There's a process that the peer review come back in 6 months' time. How we respond to the peer review and the timescale in which we do that and the enduring nature of that is entirely down to us as individual councils and collectively how we work together.
Can I come back?
Sorry, yes, I was trying to come back to what you said before, where peer review again back in March, so yeah, we're going to have a gauge of where we are against that. So what sort of timescales? January, February before we. Is it going to be January or February before we actually come back to this committee?
Yeah, Chairman, I'd like to see us do as much work as we can, working with members and officers outside of the committee. So if this action plan were to be agreed in terms of this direction we're going in, lots of work being done outside of committees because it's more productive to do it that way, to then come back early in the new year to say, actually, the action plan was signed off. Here's the work and progress we've made thus far. Here's the date when we've got the peer review team coming back. Actually, is there anything you want us to cover off in the intervening period? So that midpoint, January, February would be the right place to bring it back.
Thank you. I've got Councillor. Okay.
Thanks, Trevor. I'm quite concerned that this is looking at how our council runs, and I think that's one of our biggest responsibilities as councillors to make sure it is running to the best we could possibly help it be. So I actually think this is more important than just trying to interpret what these words mean and sending an email in. I really think that we need the opportunity to discuss some of this for us to actually have genuinely useful input into this. So I'd propose that we perhaps even hold this action plan until the members have had the opportunity to do that. And your idea would probably be better than mine, but some kind of workshop would probably be a good way forward.
Trevor?
Chairman, I think the idea of an all-member workshop would be really, really useful and would happily endorse that. I'd ask members, given the action plan is largely drawn from the recommendations that are put forward, it provides the framework for us to kind of segment the work and move things along. If your committee were able to endorse the headlines within the action plan, and we were to put in as early as possible a member workshop to discuss, dissect, look at how we move forward, the peer review, I'd be more than happy for us to arrange that, but perhaps use, if we're able to, the framework of the action plan that you've got in front of you to shape that conversation, because otherwise we'll spend a whole lot of time dissecting different parts of the report when it's the recommendations that we need to get after, because they're what the peer review team have said, these are the salient points within the plan. So if you were able to recommend this goes forward with the caveat that it's subject to an all-member working group, more than happy to put that in place.
Thank you. And also it'd have to be after the agreement of Cabinet as well, on the 1st of November. I think I'd got Councillor Riley, Councillor Holland, and then Councillor Davis, and then we'll draw this.
Thanks, Chair. Drop of coffee. Cheers. Yeah. Yeah. The recommendation, and as you know, Trevor, our peer reviews have been going on for years around the country as well. Sometimes councils don't agree with the recommendations, or they agree in part with the recommendations. It's up to each council, and of course, the people that come in and do the peer review are, a small number of people for a limited amount of time. And I know that Ian, for instance, was a councillor in which authority was it? Oxfordshire. He was involved with a collaborative council which ceased to be. I think that's when he lost his seat as well, if I've read Google correctly. I also noticed that Ian said 3 times, and his transcript this as well, that he thought it was a shame that his own council had departed from collaboration, and seemed to have a bit of a sort of prejudged view on this, and I found it a little bit disconcerting. So a little bit of feedback on that one. I'm finding the recommendations unclear and confused. And I think Sue Holland's point as well about mixing up political independence and judgment in terms of councillors, whoever runs the council, whatever party. I'm finding it all a bit confused. Now, it's obvious because it's been stated here that leaders have had a discussion with, I'm guessing, yourself. You've indicated this, and I think Councillor Nerden brought this out. So these recommendations are in line with whatever was discussed there. But when you go through the report, there's a number of recommendations which are really unclear. A couple of them was raised within the working group that me and Stuart Clancy sat on, and we did have a whole view about them, and we did inform Ian when he was here of our view. But the report that was written, which we still have not endorsed actually, seems to be picked up in this review almost identically. And one of them is on the issue about streamlining and need for streamlining in terms of efficiency around scrutiny and replacing the panels. There's no detail in here about what that actually means. So what we're being asked today to do is to endorse the recommendations. So that's endorsed. The cabinet endorses it. That's it. And then the detail of whatever that is kind of unfolds at some other point in time. And I find that this is scrutiny a bit problematic. One other point around this, because there's so much you could say, but we haven't got time to say it today, is that, and this has come up before, excuse me, within the last couple of years in particular, it did come up in the working group, Stuart, as well, that one of the issues with the one team is the more and more you align for efficiency and ease of policy so that the officers are only working on one policy, etc., the more and more you restrict the political independence of whoever leads the council, whether that's Conservative, Lib Dem, Labour or whoever, from coming up with its own defined policies for its own authority. There's actually a kind of downward pressure from actually having your own independent policies and developing them for your own needs. And that's a real concern that I'm seeing in this report, because there's more and more being pushed towards aligning even cabinet positions. It's been stated here that cabinet positions should be identified and aligned. So I'm not quite sure that really what is it we're doing anymore. Is it purely around efficiency and officers only operating on one set of policies for that? And the old issue about independent policy making, the ability to do that, because that officer then has got to deal with a different policy than South Norfolk. There seems to be a downward pressure against that, and the ability to be able to drive policy for our own residents as we see fit. I think there's a fault line developing in this, and there's not enough detail in it to endorse recommendations, as I'm seeing it at the moment, Trevor. That's my view. I don't think there's any bad behaviour in that challenge.
No, I'm sure there wasn't. So in terms of taking your points in turn, the peer reviewers are an experienced team of peer reviewers, and they don't bring their own baggage, if that's the right word, to the table. The recommendations have not been influenced by the leaders of either council. The recommendations, if you were at the feedback session, are as they were at the feedback session. That was the hot debrief from the peer reviewers. Really, the only thing that the leaders have had, they saw first sight of the draft, but the draft remains unamended from that they saw. So there's no question of any interference or influence in terms of the report or the recommendations as they've been brought forward. In terms of that collaborative working, as early as the feasibility study, there's reference in there to looking to align policies and procedures where it makes sense to do so. What it doesn't, it's not prescriptive in that it doesn't say, and the council shall have the same policies. And I don't think the peer review is saying that the council shall have the same policies. It's saying that it needs to take a common approach and sensible approach in how it looks at them. We do have differences. But we have differences where there's a requirement to have differences as perceived by the members of each authority. What we have made is significant strides in some areas where we've been able to agree common policies and approaches. Probably one of the exemplars would be our progress towards first-class housing, where actually significant strides have been made through the collaborative process. But I don't think the peer reviewers, nor the feasibility study or the actions of either council have set to one tie the hands of the other where the other doesn't wish to. So I don't think that's quite a true representation. One of the things that the peer review team were clearly getting at was, do you really need to discuss the same thing in lots of different places before you get to a decision? Now, it might be that you discuss in I don't know, if, for example, one of the propositions within the peer review is review, and it's not saying change, but review your committee structures. Can you do that in a more expedient way? There's lots of different ways you can do that. So you can have a joint committee. You can have two committees that meet in the same place at the same time, discuss the same issue. There's lots of different ways of feeding that into your decision-making process, none of which ties the hands of the decision makers. So all they're asking us to do is review that and say, actually, can you make better use of your collective time? Because if you map some of the reports we take forward currently, they go to 6 or 7 different places before they get to a decision. And if you're lucky, and that's if they get past go in all of those stages. If they don't get past go, then there's a real risk they have to go back to the beginning again and start the 6 stages again. So they're just saying, have a look at it. Are there things you can do better in the way you work to get to a result more expediently? Not saying that the result has to be common, but in a common sense way, saying if it can be, because there's no good reason why it shouldn't be, then move it to a common place. But we've already done that and got really good examples where we have done that.
Thank you. I've got Sue, then Jan, then Stuart Clancy, and then we'll try and wrap up. And I've got an amended recommendation for number 2, based on what we've said, geared around fetching the all-member workshop. So we'll come with that.
Yes, thank you. I'm still finding that this report is stepping over that line from administration to what is political. For example, when it talks about the creation of an overarching joint committee to match the already formed but not used joint scrutiny committee. Well, if you're 2 separate councils, you can't have a joint committee that's making decisions, because it's tying the individual councils. For me, this is more confusing and more constricting for different councils than anything else. So the administration, I'm not unhappy about the collaboration. I think the team are doing a fabulous job. But my point would be that we are elected to represent our areas, and we are a sovereign council. And so many things that you read into this almost give the appearance of taking us further to linked political working. It talks about, management of political teams, not agreeing and so on. You will always have that in the political sphere because you have different political parties. That's how we get elected. So you can't be surprised that we have different views about things. So to be tied to a completely different council, it just doesn't work, I don't believe. So I'm afraid I still don't think that this actually addresses those problems. And it does still lead me to think that there is a potential moving towards a merger, which has not been discussed at all.
Chairman, so I find myself saying more and more often, there is no, if there's a plan for a merger, it's not one that I'm privy to. There is no plan for a merger. In fact, actually, as far as I'm aware, both councils guard their, it's misuse of the word sovereignty, but they guard their independence jealously, and rightly so, because as the councillor says, you're elected to represent the members of a community. The peer review is not saying that. The peer review is saying, can you have a look at the way you take decisions and see if you can do that in a more efficient, expedient way? We might look at it and go, actually, no, we can't. Or we might look at it and go, well, there's some things here. Look, this is early policy development. Can we do something better around early policy development? Even if it's get both sets of councillors in a room who are on whatever the theme is, whether that's the environment, whether that's whatever it happens to be, and say, well, we're over here on this, we're over here on this. Is there any common ground? Let's exploit the common ground. Let's make accommodation for where there's not common ground. It's not directing. It's not the job of the peer reviewers to direct what we do. They're just saying, can you have a look at it?
Thank you. Jan?
Yeah, just very quickly then, just to kind of support what Councillor Holden has said, but it is an opportunity. So it's recognising it is an opportunity, and let's hope it's not a lost opportunity by taking forward some of the suggestions that have been made. I think going right back to Councillor Kelly's first points around transparency, and that we have it there on page 18, actually 47 of the papers, where it says transparency could be further improved, and it's around, I don't understand, it's similar to Councillor Kelly, what some of those issues are, and therefore I feel it in an awkward position to be able to then endorse, if you like, the recommendations without actually fully understanding what those issues are. And that's why and emailing isn't sufficient. We need a discussion, and hence I will support certainly the idea of a member workshop to be able to discuss these issues, properly understand what they are, because I don't at the moment from this report, so that then we can make, I think, informed recommendations and decisions. So I support the workshop, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor, do you...
Yeah, Chairman, and I think there's an irresistible direction of travel in terms of a workshop, which very much support. The recommendations are the peer reviewers. They're not ours to amend. It's our response to those recommendations. So they are the peer reviewers. That's their view, taken at a snapshot in time, to help us to ask questions of ourselves to move forward. I think the workshop would provide that really good opportunity to explore and unpack their recommendations. I'd suggest that what you've got in front of you is kind of almost the minimal approach, and it's the high level approach. It's what sits underneath that we really get granular if we were to have the member workshop that's being promoted.
Agree. I think the action plan would then tease out a lot of what's coming from that. So I'll take Stuart Clancy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to endorse a lot of what has been said. I think it's premature to endorse the recommendations as we have them in front of us at the moment, because it's an example of putting the cart before the horse. It's very disappointing, I have to say, and I'd like it minuted that the collaborative working group spent best part of 4 or 5 months doing some very good work, which actually has been effectively ignored through this report, because we were never in a position to actually publish and endorse a report, which is disappointing, because we were working in the interests of collaborative working to look at what the good, the bad and the ugly, and the good, the bad and the ugly was starting to emerge. And it's a great shame we weren't allowed to finish our report. It's quite damaging, in my view, to the reputation of the authority that we weren't allowed to complete that in a way which we previously were. However, I genuinely believe there's a lot of good work in this peer review, and I fully support the opportunity for member workshops. But I don't think you're going to achieve anything by a single member workshop. It'll be like herding cats, because if we have everybody in the same room, and I suggest this should be South Norfolk and Broadland as well, my view would be to timeline it so it doesn't go on infinitum, but to have a series of thematical workshops working on various themes which are fleshed out by this report. And then the workshops actually report with a series of recommendations, which then goes through due process as well. Because if we endorse this report today, it says for Cabinet to adopt the peer review action plan. So in other than words, we are adopting this report. Be under no illusions, we are adopting this report unless we actually look to review this report ourselves and come up, as I say, thematical review would be a sensible way to do it, because, you know, you imagine us all in the one room, all South Norfolk councillors, all Broadland councillors, trying to review this report in one workshop. That isn't going to happen, and it won't happen in a constructive way. And, you know, it's really, and I can't reiterate enough how disappointed I was personally, and I believe I speak for the whole committee, that we, time and task group, that we weren't allowed to finish our work and fully endorse the report, because we were specifically requested to do this, to actually feed into this report, which is very, very disappointing. It hasn't happened in the way it was designed. There's some good stuff in here, and we mustn't reject it in its entirety. It would be absolutely wrong for us to reject it. But it's important for members to be able to craft how we see the action plans going forward in the best interest of our customers, which is our residents. So my view would be that we had however many thematical workshops, and which were very disciplined, very organised, very professional, and we actually, how can I say, came back so we had an opportunity to explore this report in the way which Councillor Holland has already suggested. So that would be my proposal, Chairman.
Chairman, if I could, we're using the word report for different things, I think. That the peer review report is the peer review report. It is what it is. It's their report, and the recommendations are their recommendations. The ask of us as a council is to review their report, construct an action plan, and demonstrate how we're moving forward against the recommendations, such that we agree that we are going to move forward and the extent to which that happens. I think unpacking the report is what I was understanding the ask of a member workshop was. And I see that as a really constructive way to unpack the report for and allow a greater level of granularity within the action plan. I'm not going to comment or be drawn on the work of the collaboration working group, because that's been discussed in other places, other times, and is really in the political sphere, not my place to comment on that. I do think there's a clear way forward if we're able to take that way forward. The recommendations are their recommendations. The report is their report. We're not at liberty to change those things. The action plan is where we earn our corn, and where we need to take things forward. It might be that you wanted to add a recommendation to the report where it says for Cabinet to adopt the peer review action plan subject to completion of. And I don't know whether that's something that you've already considered.
Yeah, I mean, the wording that we have in front of us at the moment is recommendation 2 would change to Cabinet to adopt the peer review action plan and instructs officers to arrange an all-member workshop to further discuss the detail of the plan going forward, including member involvement regarding considerations of the actions. The outcome of the workshops to continue actions arising from the plan to be reported back to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
I don't remember anybody actually proposing that.
I know that's what I was.
So
Just,
are you now? Are you saying that's your recommendation?
That was my recommendation. Grant?
If I look at those two recommendations, 8.1 and 8.2, and I would be very happy to support 8.1. However, when it comes to for Cabinet to adopt the peer review action plan, when we talk about the recommendations are incorporated into the peer review report that was done for us. So by approving the publication, I'm happy to do that. However, the action plan has got the recommendations from the peer review report duplicated, but given actions. And I'm a little concerned that members need to have the action, need to have input into the peer review action plan, which is basically what they've recommended and how we as members are going to implement that action plan. So if I was to put subject to, I would say, no, we don't want them to adopt that action plan as it is until it has been through a member workshop. And that includes both South Norfolk and Broadland members. So I don't, if I'm with respect, agree with the recommendation that has been put subject to. I would say that we will only endorse the publication of the peer review report. And we, as the recommendation is to adopt the peer review action plan, no, we will go to we will recommend to Cabinet that the peer review action plan be subject to a member workshop review, end of. We're not asking them to adopt it, we're just saying that it will be subject to a member review.
Trevor wants to come in. I've got Peter Bullman and then
Steve as well.
Steve.
Chairman, thank you. There's a, choose my words carefully. I don't think there's a huge difference in terms of the positions being adopted, whether it's the draft plan is adopted subject to a review panel, or whether the draft plan is not adopted but put through a member review panel. The crux is there's a member briefing session and a discussion around the action plan that moves forward, which actually, in terms of the peer review and external validation, is a really positive thing, because it's saying to the external validation, actually the members are really engaged in this process. They want to understand more and they want to be engaged in the process. So whether you amended 8.2 to say for Cabinet to adopt the draft peer review action plan subject to a member review panel, or if you simply made a recommendation to say that actually we can't get there until we've had a member, they're so close to being the same thing. Well, in terms of outcome, they would be so close to being the same thing. You know, am I going to lose any sleep over that? No, probably not.
Thank you, Peter.
If I look at the report, the report from the peer review, and I listen to the comments that have been made successively by Trevor and others, we're committing to a review of matters. But if I look at recommendation 5 in the peer review report, it doesn't say review, it says streamline processes, which says to me that we need to, it is a given that we need to streamline processes. I'm not comfortable with that at all, because I do take Trevor's point about issues going around the circuit more than once, and sometimes the decision-making process is a bit circuitous. But on the other hand, I still believe that members should be involved in discussing, reviewing, and making recommendations before decisions are taken. And I think it's invaluable to have, as part of the process, many of the panels that we already have. So this says we will streamline the process. I would like that to mean we will review streamlining the processes. But so I'm not quite clear how that is actually articulated in the recommendations we're being asked to consider this morning. Perhaps Trevor, you'd like to expand on that.
Chairman, if I might. Yeah, more than happy to do that. So the peer review team are not in a position to direct either council what they do, and neither is it their function or intent. They do word their recommendations, but they don't have the authority to direct the council, nor would they wish to. In terms of the action plan that's been proposed, it clearly says review options for streamlining, i.e. consider, can we do? So I think it's consistent with what you were saying, Councillor. Equally, work with members to review options for introducing joint forums. So we're considering the recommendations that have been put forward, and ultimately they may be taken forward in part or in total, or they may not, because the councils may say, actually, no, we're comfortable with what we've got and the way we do things. And yes, there's a time penalty, but actually that time penalty is worth it because we're getting to the outcomes that we want to get to individually and or collectively. So I think we have addressed that, but to reassure members of Overview and Scrutiny, the peer review neither are in the position or have the intent to direct councils on what they do, really to stimulate the conversations on things they would want us to consider.
But so I think that looking at what we're saying here is that we're going to look at option 1, which is to approve the peer review report, and then the option 2 is looking at an all-member briefing prior to workshop, prior to. Have you got the wording?
I just don't know who's going to agree the action.
Chair, can I propose just a short 8.2? So for members to consider the report with a view to agree on a peer review action plan. Sorry. I mean, what we're doing is, what we want to do as members, as has been expressed, is to consider, discuss, explore the peer review action report, peer review report. And as a result of that, we may well endorse the recommendations or suggest that we take other recommendations. So simply, 8.2, I would suggest, could be for members to consider the report with a view to agree a peer review action plan. And it may well be the one in the report or slightly modified. Yeah.
So I could just pick up slightly what was being said there, but it's in my mind as well. The issue is this is going to the Cabinet on the 1st. So the Cabinet might agree, bearing in mind the leaders have already had discussions about this. I think they're comfortable with what these recommendations are. That's my guess. I think that's a fair presumption. So in that case, the Cabinet may well, for all we know, but of course, that's what we're here for as well, to give a view as well, may well endorse this as exactly as it is. But I think what's being said here today is, trying to encompass this, is that our recommendation to the Cabinet, and members can clearly clarify this a bit further, is that I'm going to have to qualify this. Sorry, Trevor, I'm going to have to qualify this. You're absolutely correct, Trevor. Absolutely accept what you're saying there, that the peer review can never direct council what to do. I mean, just can't do that. But what it can do is come up with recommendations. Now, you then evaluate those recommendations. And the problem here is that the wording that's attached to the recommendation here actually endorses the recommendations ahead of knowing what they really mean. And just one point on that. A number of these recommendations were actually prompted before. We've seen them virtually word for word, me and you, Stuart, months before the peer review came in. So clearly there's something here in terms of who understands what, in terms of where things are going. So, the streamlining element of this, Overview and Scrutiny, we pre-scrutinise Cabinet. They don't in South Norfolk. What's the implication around this? What does it mean by panels? Do you eliminate panels? Don't you eliminate? Do panels form some sort of... The issue here is that We don't understand any of this. We don't understand what's at the heart of these recommendations. And I think that there's officers that probably do know there's some meat around some of these bones that we don't currently know, just talking about transparency, that we don't currently know or can understand. But ahead of that, we're agreeing with the recommendations. That's the problem. So I think, as it's been said, that's why I couldn't agree with the recommendations they stand without some in-depth understanding about what the proposals are. And then members go, oh, no, we don't want to go down that road. And then the cabinet can then, come have a robust position around their recommendation around this. At the moment, the cabinet could recommend this, agree to the recommendations, but it's blind, and we're blind in terms of what's actually being proposed here. That's the problem, mine.
Chairman, I don't know if this is helpful. The recommendations are the recommendations. We run into a challenge of talking about too many different sets of recommendations. So for clarity, the peer review report is the report of the peer review team, is not up for amendment. The recommendations in the peer review are their recommendations and are not up for amendment. They are their recommendations. It's the actions, not the recommendations, that are at our discretion as councils, and one of the actions we might take after having a member session is to say we don't recognise that recommendation, we're not going to take it forward, all the way through to we do recognise that recommendation and we're going to go somewhere on a continuum from here to here in the way we approach that. And it may be just my listening to what Councillor Riley was just saying, that we are not being asked to approve the recommendations. We are being asked in that recommendation no, there's two recommendations. So recommendation one is for Cabinet to approve the publishing of the peer review report. So that's a tick VG. And then there was a subsequent, and I kind of, I'm personally as an officer agnostic whether we ask whether as a committee you ask for Cabinet to adopt a draft plan subject to a review, or whether you say, actually, we think we want to do a review, a member workshop. But if it's the prior, then none of that changes the recommendation in the peer review report. It's merely what we do with them.
Does change.
So, yeah, I think what we need to do is to look at A2 as it has to be the member view.
Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Bowden. Yeah, very brief, Chair. Can we not just keep this? Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Okay, we're there. Sorry. Can we not just keep this very simple at this point? Can we vote on the two recommendations as they are, but separately?
Yep. Yes.
And just keep it as simple as that.
Okay. Okay, that's where we'll go with this. So we'll go to the recommendations. Number one, to approve the publishing of the peer review report.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Option two is to adopt the peer review action plan. All those in favour?
None in favour, Chairman.
All those against?
That's everyone by yourself.
Okay, abstaining.
Yep, so that's 11 for one abstention.
Thank you. I think I was going to say now we move to a recommendation, an additional recommendation for the peer review report recommendations to be reviewed by an all-member panel. All those in favour?
Can I just get that again? Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
So now it's our recommendation.
Our proposal to. Yep.
I think based on members' comments, I would suggest that I think you're probably all in agreement that
you would recommend to council that an all-member workshop be arranged.
Cabinet.
Sorry, cabinet. That an all-member workshop be arranged to discuss the detail of the actions proposed in relation to the peer report recommendations. No?
It's to discuss the recommendations.
The detail of the actions, as Trevor said, you can't change the recommendations. So the actions in relation, you can, but yeah, you can't change them. So I think they're set. So looking at then the actions proposed in relation to the peer report recommendations, including further member involvement regarding devising and agreeing the actions, and then the outcome of the workshops and continued action arising from the plan to be reported back to Overview and Scrutiny Committee, so you can keep on top of progress made.
I don't think you're going to achieve that in all members with South Norfolk and Broadland all in one room, going through this whole report and getting something meaningful out of it. That is absolutely right, absolutely correct. But okay, compromise situation, have a couple of sessions or something, where it can be joint South Norfolk and Broadland in a couple of sessions, then bring the conclusions of those two sessions together. But if you get a big response to this, that means you're going to have all councillors in one room discussing one report, and you're not going to get the maximum benefit out of that, Chairman. The compromise is have a couple of sessions or something. Yeah, separately.
Our response could be different.
Yeah, it could be separately. Yeah.
Well, exactly. Could just comment there. I think the words that they've got here are kind of where we want to go. I wouldn't disagree with that, but I think I think that what Stuart is saying is correct. The problem here is it's fine. It's the cabinet then. So we've rejected 2. We're then saying the therefore why really, and what we're asking cabinet to do, and that is for cabinet to agree for member sessions, however that is developed, because say member sessions, to review the detail of recommendations as outlined by officers, because we don't know what the meat is on those bones. And that's what we need to review to then agree, for then cabinet to subsequently agree.
So we're just coming up
try
with
again. So,
It's like a UN.
an all-member workshop be arranged to review the proposed actions in relation to the peer report recommendations. And then I think, sessions, not workshops, we'll put sessions. And then in terms of agreement of those, of the actual plan, are you happy then to recommend that the conclusion of those sessions goes back to cabinet to be agreed?
Yeah, and ONS obviously.
And you want that to go back through ONS first, and then continued review of the outcome of those, of the plan and the development of the plan as well.
Could you read that as it's going to be put in front of us?
So recommend to cabinet that an all-member, or I'll change it from Anne. So all member sessions be arranged to review the proposed actions proposed. Sorry, I've got to propose. The proposed
Can I
actions.
just interrupt? Sorry, if I may. We want to review the action plan. That's it. Not the actions in the peer review with recommendations. We just want to say that we want to review. Members want to review the action plan as proposed. Yeah. Yeah, we just want to review the action plan. That's it.
So you're recommending to cabinet that all member sessions be arranged to review the proposed actions in relation to the peer report recommendations, including further member involvement regarding devising and agreeing the actions. Yes. And then the outcome of those sessions and continued action arising from the plan to be reported back to ONS. And like I said, that will go on to cabinet, to be agreed.
Okay, everyone clear on the recommendation? Yeah. All those in favour? Carried.
It's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. We'll take that.
Propose a
Before
little
we
comfort break.
yeah, before
I
we
was
move
gonna
on,
say,
can we
no
have a
more
comfort
proposals.
break?
No.
You're not allowed anymore. You've had
We have a comfort
regular
63 of the Cabinet Papers, and we have Simon with us. And thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So you've got the report in front of you that's going to Cabinet next week for the approval of the award for the redevelopment of the Frettenham Depot. As you recall, the Cabinet agreed to outsource the management of the depot, redevelopment of the depot to Veolia, because obviously Veolia is operating the contract and has considerable experience of depot redevelopment. And the report, sorry, I'm just getting up here. The report takes you through a little bit of the background, obviously, with regard to the depot. It's quite old. It's very tired. It doesn't really meet modern safety standards, particularly the workshop there, where they have to deflate the tyres on the vehicles to get it in there. Effectively, they've gone out to 3 contractors to get quotes, as the council would go out to get quotes against specification, and we've had or they've had those tenders back in, which are set out in paragraph 3.2 of the 3 contractors. They are all very close, the bids, I must say. There we have had, we also saw independent verification of the specification, had it costed by Curry & Brown, who are asset management specialists, and particularly around the waste industry as well. They've worked extensively in the county and in Suffolk next door to us around that. And you'll see again in paragraph 3.4 that the costings they gave were considerably higher actually than the tender specifications. We are getting those figures just checked a little bit more now that we've had the tenders in. We're able to send the detailed breakdown of the costings of the tenderer to Curry & Brown, just to make sure that everything's been included and nothing's been missed out, and it is compliant to compliant specifications. So we're having that checked out, but we believe that to be the case because it wouldn't be in Veolia's interests to specify the works lower than the required. You'll see as well that there is a large amount of environmental improvement included, £400,000 worth of environmental improvements included in the redevelopment of the site. Extensive amounts of solar panels put on the roofs and above the parking bays for the lorries. They've limited the amount of solar going on at the moment to 6.69 kWp, which is a measurement of output around that. They've limited that at the moment because effectively that's the amount of electricity that's required at the site at this moment in time. Put more solar panels on, yes, you get more electricity, but they can't use it. It wouldn't be usable at the moment, and they can't put it back into the grid either, because the grid doesn't want it back. At the moment, there's overcapacity because it's not an automatic ability to be able to put the power back in. You have to seek permission, and they don't need it back at the moment. The costs are higher though than were originally specified or were outlined in the bid documentation, where all 3 of the bidders were asked to submit an outline of what they thought the upgrade was required at the depot and how much that would cost, which again is in paragraph 2.4. Is higher than the lowest one anyway, but I would draw your attention to the fact that between when the bids were submitted by Veolia and the other 2 bidders back in July, costs have somewhat massively increased, particularly steel and particularly concrete, which are both the main elements required at the depot. Hence, that's why the cost has gone higher. And as I draw your attention to the fact that Curry & Brown have costed the works higher than the tenders have come out at. Obviously, the council have a budget provision at the moment, which again is set out in the report, which is actually lower than is required. So obviously there are options for the council either to decide to increase the capital allowance to allow us to do all of the works there, or obviously we could negotiate with Veolia and the contractors to effectively remove elements of the upgrade to the depot, and they're likely, in essence, to be some of the environmental improvements, because other elements of the depot work are required. You can't, you know, if we were to downgrade the concrete down to asphalt, then it wouldn't last very long, because the lorries will destroy that very, very quickly. So again, in 6.1, the resource implications are set out there for you, and obviously it's recommending that we should seek £400,000, which is the cost of the environmental improvements, from the in the opportunities funding for the net zero, to try and net zero reserve. That money was, and the £822,000, some of that element was set aside to put solar provision at the depot anyway, so it's actually some of the funding that was required for that anyway. But you'll see that there's still a shortfall even drawing that money into it of 275,000, or just over 275,000. So that's set out in there. And then in terms of the environmental bit, obviously lots of environmental improvements in there, and we're seeking to get the depot to BREEAM excellent equivalent standard. Veolia have their own methodology that they use, which isn't the BREEAM one, but we are hoping to get the depot almost to BREEAM excellent standard. That may be difficult to actually achieve because of the fact that a lot of the workforce have to drive to the depot because there's no public transport to get there, and that is taken into account in the BREEAM calculations. So I just draw your attention to, we may not actually achieve excellent standard as we would hope. And then you've got the recommendations, you know, set out in front of you in paragraph 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Then Ken.
Thank you, Chairman. Very detailed report. Thank you. I'm looking at paragraph 3.8, 3.9, and just a comment that you made about not being able to export power into the grid. Having got solar panels on. At my property, I've got solar panels, I've got battery storage. Is battery storage not an option for an organization like this? Because you say in 3.8 is estimated that the financial payback on these enhancements will be approximately 7 years, circa 60,000 per year, through reduced cost and Veolia paying the council for the electricity being generated by the solar panels. If they were able to store through battery storage, would they then see a lower cost for both the council and Veolia through the efficiency of the solar panels generating power that can be used and can be stored?
Oops. Batteries are included. So it is batteries. The mere fact is that at the moment they do not require more than that amount, that level of electricity. The report does set out that a further report is being done where we're looking at the future, because obviously the contract does specify that 4 years into the contract, a move over to either electric or hydrogen vehicles. Now, at that point, we probably need more electricity, but we don't know yet. So there isn't really the financial benefit of investing in a lot of solar at the moment if in 4 years' time we suddenly find that most of the refuge vehicles are actually hydrogen powered as opposed to electric powered. But in the answer to your question, simply yes, batteries are there already, so they're storing and utilizing as much electricity as they possibly can.
Yeah, welcome Simon and Sarah. Nice to see you. Great report as normal. I noticed in 3.9, and we've discussed this, Simon, quite a lot, about the fact of whether we're going to be electrical or hydrogen driven, and in there, the costs of possible another 500,000 lurking there. And it does say, that we've got the contractor is going to be looking at that. It's a lot of money, but it doesn't have in the summary of timescales when the report will come back from their recommendations. Do you have an idea of when this would be?
I'm looking to Sarah, but we were expecting that by the end of this financial year.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
that
it'll
would
be
give
by
us some
December.
clear direction. So we may at this stage have to ask for another 500,000 if they go the direction of where we need the electrical.
It's sorry, I can't be more. I can't give you a definitive answer at the moment because effectively the technology is moving so rapidly, and we know that electric vehicles will not. We know that we will have to have a mixed fleet. We can't at this stage have an entire electric fleet because they just can't operate in the rural parts of the district. And both the portfolio holder and myself went to a conference the other week where they were looking at hydrogen powered for refuge vehicles, and the technology looks as though it may well be moving to hydrogen as opposed to electric.
Yeah.
But you do need a hell of a lot of free electricity to generate the hydrogen required.
Yeah, quite agree. Can I just say that this proposal really is long overdue? I mean, we do owe it to, our duty as health and safety as a council to the Veolia workers, that we do give them a standard of working which is par excellence and future proofs. And I heartily recommend the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holland.
Yeah, mine was sort of related to the electric options, because I had been reading about hydrogen power, which seems to be coming on in leaps and bounds. If we were to need more solar, though, there is capacity. We can do that. There is space to do that, and there is ability to do that. Is there?
We haven't put solar carports over the parking area at the moment, so there's a capacity there. As I said, where the lorry is going to be parked have solar on the top. The workshop has solar on. We're also trying to explore very slowly whether the land adjacent, which we don't own, but is low-grade agricultural land, there's a possibility that we may be able to either lease or purchase that land from the landowner. But that's progressing slowly, in which case you put a large solar farm there on that.
What is the reason we cannot sell electricity back to the grid? Because as a householder, I do.
Yeah, it's because basically, effectively, they have to want to buy it back, and you have to fill it. I can't remember the name of the form now, and then but because of the volumes of electricity that will probably be generated, they don't require that at the moment. The infrastructure they don't require that. That's what they're saying anyway at this moment in time. I suppose in part it probably means that the grid don't want to pay £500,000 to upgrade the electrical supply to the depot for us to be able to sell it back to them, in essence.
Councillor Prutton?
Electricity again, 3.8. You talk about the Veolia paying the council for the electricity being generated. How are those figures going to be agreed?
Those figures have yet to be calculated and worked through, but again, their environmental specialists will calculate, and obviously we'll agree those on a unit price around those figures.
So a third party is
third party, and again, the council is working around with the Horizon building and what have you with Wren Energy, who's a third party. They're advising the council on other parts, and they've advised South Norfolk on solar panels on there. So we'll use those as well to
thank you,
to verify the figures.
Councillor Davies?
Yeah, thank you. Am I reading this right then? In terms of the tenders coming in quite substantially lower than what was anticipated. If I'm reading it right, there's a huge difference here. So I'm just, and as you say, you're double checking. But can I also introduce then, perhaps there's an issue around, I don't know, solar is so around ethical procurement. Are these cheap solar from, yeah.
The contract requires not this necessarily the depot contract. Well, the depot contract, but the whole of the Veolia contract requires them to procure not only the solar but vehicles and everything like that on an ethical basis. HVO the same. They have to prove it's all ethical. We've got the specification. They've sent the detailed specification through for the solar. I'm no solar expert on it, but it looks bona fide to me. But again, that's what we will send through to Curry and Brown to verify. The large variations are that obviously when Curry and Brown checked the figures for us, they only had a very, the high level outline specification. And talking to them in detail yesterday, they may have put costs in that obviously Veolia are meeting anyway, because we know they're meeting the project management costs. And those, so we're having it. All I can say at the moment is we're having the figures double checked because they are quite considerably different.
Thank you. Any more questions? If not, I'll take us to yeah.
It's just a scrutiny question, actually, for public read, just to get the point out. Under the recommendations to allocate 400,000 from the opportunities budget net zero reserves to fund the enhanced renewables as part of their redevelopment. Have the solar panels already been installed?
No.
No, right. So just being absolutely clear about this. And this is the cost of those solar panels.
Well, it's not just the solar panels, but it's some of the other net zero elements in it, in improvements into the water harvesting and all of those sorts of aspects within the depot.
So
but it's preliminarily the
yeah.
solar
So
panels.
water harvesting, solar panels, anything else?
There's all air source heat pumps and all
Right.
all of those, but that's required anyway. It is in the report, the sort of the highlights of some of the details of that in section 3.5 highlight some of those.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. You had one.
Yeah, just to follow on that from that. So I'm just getting my head around the various pots of funding here, because we had this discussion the other day on the Environmental Excellence Panel meeting as well. Is just monitoring how much is coming out of this. Is this? I mean, Councillor Kelly will probably know. Is this the same fund that we were talking about in terms of net zero? No. Okay.
This was the in-year savings from last year that the Cabinet set aside for a range of projects. So this is separate to that. This was specifically for solar panel and EV electrical charging points across the district. It's different money.
Thank you. Can I take the recommendations on block on page 68? And all those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll draw the meeting to a close and thank you very much.